masterpiece in avant-garde, madness, death metal, all that sort of stuff, and they do it perfectly. And now you can hear it in under 5 minutes. Hey there guys, welcome back, and hello if you are new. Thank you so much for being so patient. I have been super ill. If you've watched any of my other Apocalyptic Anniversaries videos, you'll know I really wanted to review this ahead of release, but I just didn't have the time, and I was just dead, basically. So with that in mind, I am now going to be talking about my favourite New York extreme jazz death metal fused music, which is Imperial Triumphant and their brand new album Goldstar. So if you're not familiar with Imperial Triumphant, they are a band which are combining elements of black metal, avant-garde, death metal, jazz, and they do this by creating a truly striking image, and I think have made some of the most unique sounding extreme metal that we've heard in quite some time. Primarily, their themes sort of revolve around the idea of New York City, its buildings, its culture, its architecture, but also the anthropomorphic qualities that the city has. They also, as you know, design is very important to the band, play with the idea of Art Deco, be it in their videos, their artwork, and even in their masks when they perform live. Previously, Spirit of Ecstasy was inspired by luxury cars, whereas Goldstar, their new album, is all about luxury cigarette ads, which I think is cool. But the important thing about this album is that this is Imperial Triumphant's shortest record, which is actually quite a big deal. You know, a lot of their songs kind of revolve around the idea of this sort of progressive exploration, kind of expanding and stuff. So to be able to distill that within 5 minutes, I think is a real amazing thing that the band have been able to do, and I think will open up a huge amount of accessibility for this band. Hotel Sphinx and Gomorrah Nouveau, for example, have melodies that you can follow, and you know, they're engineered to kind of make it feel slightly off as well. Whereas the previous album kind of was very dense and kind of quite crushing in many places, Goldstar really has a lot of room to breathe. You know, you've got Lexington Delirium, for example, which makes you feel like you're floating above New York City in this stasis, before you get brought right back down to earth by Tomas Haake and his signature kind of "the gold is to the black" and that sort of thing. The gold which crowns this tower. The spoken word section of Tomas Haake, though, definitely reminded me of those moments of like Catch 33, and that sort of like, I don't know, his finality of what he says is just really cool. There's also the other side of things, which is the furious kind of discordance and dissonance of the band, like the 48-second, I think it is, New York City, which is basically kind of a experimental grind jam with Yoshiko Ohara, who has worked with the band before. And as ever, the performance on this record is amazing. Kenny Grohowski, you know, continues to prove that he is one of the most versatile drummers out there. You know, Rock Moderne, for example, I think is really interesting because they have a bit more of a sort of like tripping over themselves time signatures. Then you've got Steve Blanco, who kind of does this up and down chromatic thing on Eye of Mars. You've got Gomorrah Nouveau, where he has this sort of like slapping, squelching bass sound, where it really kind of takes you into the different textures, I think, of what make up an Imperial Triumphant record. Lexington Delirium, again, you know, shows a lighter sort of side of his playing, you know, with like artificial harmonics and things like that. But for me, the big one is the riffs. I think on this record, there's more riffs than there have been before. There's kind of more influence of that sort of Voivod-esque kind of sound, like Lexington Delirium or Pleasure Dome is a great example of that. But there's even a guitar solo at the end of Industry of Misery as well, which I thought was, you know, really kind of welcome and something different from the band. But atmosphere has always been very key to Imperial Triumphant, and that sort of opulence comes through on tracks like Hotel Sphinx's Bridge, which is kind of like an iteration of Handel's Sarabande in D minor. And then Goldstar, the actual track, which is a reimagining of, you know, like 1950s cigarette adverts. You know, and you can hear the sort of like barbershop quartet kind of vibe, which I really liked. Try new Goldstar, die for. The record often makes you feel like you're floating through the black. With the ivory tinkling and kind of how everything kind of comes in, it really does feel like you're suspended in this kind of limbo of darkness, and then it's just like BAM! And then the end of that track kind of becomes this swirling void of endlessness that just makes you feel like the wheels are about to fall off before it sort of dissolves into nothing, and then we start the process again. Well, there's 3 guests in total which are on Imperial Triumphant. There's Yoshiko Ohara of Bloody Panda, then there's Tomas Haake, who appears with spoken word on Pleasure Dome and also Lexington Delirium. And then we've got Dave Lombardo, who performs a sort of like Latin-inspired style beat on Pleasure Dome, and it complements the music and again just shows the sort of many different strings to their bow that Imperial Triumphant have. Something I've always admired about this band is how they can bring all of these ideas and put them together into something that is quintessentially Imperial Triumphant. You know, they've got these sort of clothing and masks that make them look like demigods of Eyes Wide Shut, kind of decadence and the sort of weird rituals that happen in that film. But then you've got the idea of the Art Deco and the higher understanding of that architecture, the sculpture. But then you've got jazz and Latin influences, which again brings that sort of highbrow up a bit, I guess. And, you know, moments from Handel as well, which again, classical is often associated with intelligence and all that sort of stuff, and they just soak it all up. But then what they do is they spit it back out, being completely black, obsidian, you know, like it's this underneath it all, there's this putrid disdain for everything. So for that reason, I'm giving this album a 10 out of 10. It is a masterpiece in avant-garde, madness, death metal, all that sort of stuff, and they do it perfectly. And now you can hear it in under 5 minutes. Thank you ever so much for checking this video out. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you think of Imperial Triumphant's new album, Goldstar. And please do hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps. And I will see you guys very, very soon for more album reviews, apocalyptic anniversaries, interviews, and all good stuff.